Welcome back, guys, and thank you for the amazing support on yesterday's video, where we discussed the recent news about Honkai Star Rail's main characters being replaced by Hoyoverse, seemingly because the VAs were a part of this strike or unofficial strike or collective work refusal, however you want to put it. And so the months go by, they still refuse to work, and Hoyoverse eventually, well, now has replaced them as mentioned with VAs who are willing and want to work. By the way, guys, look at that. I'm almost at 1,000 followers on my VTuber Twitter account. Consider following me on my VTuber Twitter account, linked in the description and pinned comment, and thank you. Now let's return to Allegra Clark and a series of tweets that she previously made that we actually talked about before. Why are we taking a look at this? Because this is going to be the prelude, a quick reminder of what she said then, as she has made another recent statement similarly saying that the strike needs to end, and some other voice actors, including I believe the VA for Capitano in Genshin Impact, has also just shared similar sentiments. So, as mentioned, let's get a quick refresher of what occurred here, then we'll move on to the new stuff. I'll just read up to like the first three here, where she said, "I'm not privy to anything that happens during negotiations, what the current language is or isn't, or anything along those lines. But I am genuinely scared that this strike will have done more damage to the industry than anyone could have foreseen, whether AI wins or not." This, as you guys probably know, responded Jennifer Hale, who made a statement regarding something she said and apologizing for that thing during a committee meeting for SAG-AFTRA about the strike, once again back on May 1st. So, Allegra Clark then said, "There's so much ugliness happening in the community, mistrust, accusations, sabotage, and fractured friendships. The stakes of the strike are understandably massive, given that they do have to do with how our voices are used in the future, whether we consent to any of it or are paid. Those stakes mean that everyone is on edge, and everyone is passionate. But my gosh, I don't recognize the industry compared to last year. This is a freaking nightmare, and I think it needs to end." She went on to say more than that, but we're just going to read up to that part for now, because similarly, she has now made a series of tweets saying once again, she thinks it's time to end this strike. There is one more thing I'll point out really quick though, that being where she also went on to say, "Fans don't trust us, we'll never fully recover from this." And yeah, a lot of these VAs have completely burned the goodwill that fans had for them. And what these VAs also need to understand is that there's been a growing distaste towards the voice acting industry, the EN voice acting industry specifically I should say, for a number of years, as far too many VAs, English VAs, have been caught doing terrible things, whether it's attacking fans or being just absolutely overt predators, stuff like that. And so this recent situation with the strike and how manipulative these VAs have been and getting all caught being manipulative liars, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, it made that growing animosity and growing distaste towards the ENVA industry that much worse. That takes us to yesterday, where Allegra Clark made this new statement responding to another VA who seems to have deleted his tweet. Go figure. We can try and presume some of the context though. First, let's see what Allegra Clark has to say. "They made a cheeky little correction this morning to confirm that employers are holding to it. Actually, sorry, it's time to end this thing. AAA productions are actively moving overseas because there's no signed contract to work on. I frickin' hate it here. This is a strike where people are gleefully reporting each other to SAG for working non-union." My gosh, these people are so pathetic. These VAs are like literal rats. They literally snitching on each other to try and look better to the other VAs in the union that approve of such behavior. Or the idea of non-union actors who work non-union during the strike may be denied membership in the future is being thrown around in actor spaces. This stuff is petty. Yeah, let's read that one more time. Non-union actors who work non-union during the strike may be denied membership in the future. So even if you're not a part of the union, they expect you to stand in solidarity, as they put it, with the strike. What this really means is they expect you to not make money and not work. They think you have the privilege, the luxury of not needing that money. And if you do work, if you want to work, you need to make some money. Well, obviously there's other jobs you could be working too and all that. But I digress, at least in this space with voice acting. These other VAs will hate you, call you a scab, harass you, and SAG itself might blacklist you. And or at the very least deny you membership to the union in the future if for some reason you did ever want to join that corrupt union, which would probably be a mistake anyways. Continuing. "Some of the most loving and professional people I know are being written off as employer plants for trying to encourage people to understand the language for themselves." Oh my gosh. "Hardworking established talent are being called elites disparagingly for wanting to go back to work. To be clear, and I sincerely apologize for not leading with this, if I see a single frickin' one of my peers tagged or heard their name tossed around with threats, then you're also part of the problem. And let's address the elephant in the room. Some actors do want certain non-union games to flip union, but many are waiting to go back because they don't want to or feel they can't work non-union during the strike. Either it's to try to be a team player with the union or work out of fear of retaliation. Now, there is something that I find quite awful, and that is, let's go back really quick. So this section where she was saying, this is a strike where people are gleefully reporting each other to SAG for working non-union. And I mentioned this is like some pathetic rat behavior to me. This seems like what happened to Venti's VA, Erica, because we know that Erica said she was getting threatening letters from SAG. But then you had a number of VAs on Blue Sky talking about what Erica said and disparaging her for criticizing the union and talking about this stuff. And a number of these VAs, according to my recollection, it was like Kyle McCarley, Karina, and Little Crebo, and some other like random ones here and there, were making it sound like they knew exactly what the letters Erica got were. Despite the fact that Erica didn't disclose what exactly they were, just that they were threatening. And then Kyle McCarley started talking a whole lot about breaking Global Rule 1. So this made it seem like one of them or another VA had ratted Erica out, and then behind closed doors in private, like told some of these other VAs in the clique, like, oh, I reported Erica. Like, it's some of the most pathetic rat stuff ever. Now, all that said, I don't think SAG should even be operating this way to begin with, because I think it's pretty scummy. Because on one hand, the union has Global Rule 1, which states here, according to SAG-AFTRA.com, and this is something we talked about a lot in the past too, but bear with me. No member shall render any services or make an agreement to perform services for any employer who has not executed a basic minimum agreement with the union, which is in full force and effect in any jurisdiction in which there is a SAG-AFTRA national collective bargaining agreement in place. This provision applies worldwide. Excuse me, by the way, it's SAG-AFTRA.org, not .com, but similarly on SAG-AFTRA.org, they have Union Myth 10. Quote, as a union member, I'm not allowed to audition for non-union work. They say, wrong. Fact, you are allowed to audition for non-union work. However, you cannot work without a union contract. Audition, get the part. You're likely to stand out in a non-union crowd. Once you're offered the role, explain that you can't do the role unless it's union. Let the producer know that going union is not nearly as complicated or expensive as they might imagine. Staff is right here in Texas to help with the paperwork. Let's pause for a second, and then we'll take a look at these three bullet points, and then we'll go back to the rest of Allegra Clark's statement and also see what Capitano's VA had to say and all that great stuff too. But pausing here, what we just read, a few very scummy things I'd like to point out. First of all, trying to get people to audition for non-union work just so you can try and flip the whole project union. Very scummy. As we know, can also potentially negatively impact the non-union people working on that job therefore. For example, getting them fired or forcing them to join the union and pay members' dues that they don't even want a part of. Otherwise, they lose their roles potentially. Very scummy. It's also just a giant waste of time for people too. Like, having your members audition for a job knowing full well that they can't technically work that job, as mentioned, is a big waste of time. These people are holding auditions looking for people to hire, and then for them, your member to then turn around and be like, actually, thank you for booking me on this role. Audition went well, thanks for booking me, but I can't actually work this. You're like wasting everyone's time. And let me point out here where they say you're likely to stand out in a non-union crowd. Notice how at this point in time in the process, the actor auditioning wouldn't actually be known to be a union member until like later when they spring that info on them. My point being, what they're implying here goes back to the pompous statements that SAG-AFTRA has made before, where they say that their members are more talented, better actors than the non-union plebs. And I'm rephrasing that a little bit, but that is what they were getting at. And you can see that same rhetoric being like interjected right here in a subtle or not so subtle way. For those that haven't seen this, here's one of the things I'm referring to, by the way. Union Myth 10, once again, SAG-AFTRA.org. Quote, union actors are better actors. This is true. You're better because union actors uphold the industry standards for all performers. Union actors are experienced professionals who know how to act on set, pun intended, implying that non-union people are not professional and don't know how to act on set. The frick? It goes on and on and on. I've already read this before. You get the point. Of course, there's also executives making disparaging remarks to non-union people, and we've seen how union members will also openly harass people who are not union for various reasons. We could make a whole list, but I digress. We've discussed this for now months, actually, so continuing. The final section on Union Myth 10, we are reading this part. Oh my gosh, I did it again. This part. Oh, what the heck? Before we go back to the VA statements, the news statements. Fact, you are encouraged to audition for non-union work because 1, non-union producers get a chance to see amazing talent they wouldn't otherwise see. 2, when you land that job, you get a union contract. You turn that non-union production union. 3, you can help organize more work by sharing information about non-union producers or companies with union staff so they can inform them about our contracts. It's like a growing virus. Hey, take over this project, and when you're there, maybe you can get some intel on other projects that are not union so we can target them next. One last thing about the note of union members breaking Global Rule 1. I do think, as mentioned, that it's really messed up for other union members to like gleefully rat out the other members. Like, don't be a rat. But on the other hand, I also do think it's messed up for union actors to take non-union work when they're not supposed to, for reasons we already went over, but also because it's just messed up to take that work from people who are not a part of the union. So yeah, that's something else. Back to Allegra Clark. Someone said, the fact that retaliation is on the table at all is actually disgusting. Free the artists. I mean, in this context, it's artists reporting other artists though, like retaliating against them. Whenever people make blanket statements like this, acting like all the actors or artists or whatever are like all innocent, it's like, bro, did you even read what you're responding to? Some of them are literally the rats. Allegra says, those are the letters that have been mentioned. Hey, I see you worked on this production, but we don't have a union ID for it. Can you let us know what's going on with this? Otherwise, we may have to escalate this to the disciplinary committee. So like I mentioned earlier, it was weird how some of the VAs like knew what Erica was apparently getting, and technically that would apply to Allegra now too. But maybe this information is now just public enough. Maybe Erica said some more stuff behind the scenes. I don't know. At this point in time, it's been a few weeks. So I think it's like a bit different than right after Venti's VA posted that info, and immediately there were VAs on Blue Sky saying stuff about how they seem to know what it is. My point being, I don't think Allegra is one of the ones who are like really bootlicking for SAG and a part of that whole clique. She seems like one of the ones openly criticizing the union to some extent, not the same level as Venti. I think Venti's VA Erica so far gets the most praise for that, but Allegra definitely doesn't seem like she's, bootlicking for SAG either. So there's that. Finally, she says, Global Rule 1 was largely ignored for so long in a field where non-union titles potentially outnumber union ones. So many people worked off card. All of a sudden, people are tactically reporting to SAG and Global Rule 1 is getting enforced. And it's being done tactically because they're reaching out about specific titles and franchises and trying to get people to sign the letters to those studios going, please flip these titles union. Immediately felt like blackmail to me. I mean, it does on many levels, including something I mentioned before, which is it seems like some of the people in SAG, in the union, who are enforcing this stuff are also selective with who they are enforcing. It looks like, at least to me on the outside looking at this stuff, like they'll give some people a pass, probably if they're the bootlickers, but then other people, if they get reported, they'll be like instantly taking action against them, and it just coincidentally happens to be the people who are also criticizing the union the most in some cases. Yeah, that looks suspicious. But again, let me stress, I think it's messed up for union actors to be taking non-union work from people who are not a part of the union. There's only so many roles out there, right? And if they're not supposed to work non-union roles, but they are, that is therefore taking those roles from people who would have got them who are not union actors, but now they can't because that role's taken up by someone who's union and not supposed to be working that job, but here they are doing it anyways. I ultimately do hope that Erica will step away from SAG-AFTRA, and I think that'd be good for her from what I've seen. I understand easier said than done, but it seems like she's more so headed that direction than not with all the statements she's been saying recently. And it sounds like she's actually going to be returning as Venti. I think she said something, I may be mistaken about this, but I do think she said something like she recorded lines for Venti already and she's just waiting for them to be added to the game. So that would imply that she's like done striking, which may also make the implication that she's breaking away from SAG-AFTRA. If that's the case, it may lead to a really good thing where we see more and more actors standing up to this corruption and leaving the union, but we'll have to see how that all actually plays out. Now, really quick, going back once again to the first tweet in the set of tweets Allegra Clark had made, she was responding to this person, Elias, who we can see right here is specifically Elias Toufexis. I have no idea how to pronounce that one. But yeah, this guy who has worked in some VA work, etc., etc. Ooh, marathon. Oof, oof, oof. But it's too bad we can't see whatever the tweet he made is because once again, it's now deleted. But hold up, look at this. Someone upset with Elias had screenshotted his tweet. It looks like this upset person saying, quote, more happiness on here, less anger, unquote. Followed up by posting about being a scab and attacking the union that's fighting for you to not be replaced by AI. Hard to have sympathy for you, my guy. Okay, SAG bootlicker. Elias had said, "I voted no on this freaking strike almost a year ago now, right on the heels of the on-camera strike. I'm so sick of this whole thing." And unfortunately, we can't see the screenshot included here in full, but a part of it had said, "We held an informational meeting on Tuesday, May 13th to review the offer with members. At this meeting, members made it overwhelmingly clear that they did not want to take the deal that was on the table. Based on this feedback and in hopes of resolving this issue, we delivered a response to employers on Wednesday, May 14th. To date, the employers have declined to respond to our offer and are holding to their last, best, and final proposal. The negotiating committee is currently considering its options and next steps." The SAG-AFTRA bootlicker getting responses such as, "With recent developments regarding this strike, quote unquote, I don't think the strike is for AI usage, especially if a company or game is not a part of it at all. Oh no, how can you live without your sympathy? Hard to have sympathy for a situation when none is offered by any side. This whole thing has abandoned the human element, and both angles should be ashamed of itself." But now here's some important additional context on this whole last offer thing. Actually, back on May 5th, Variety had said, "Video game companies release best and last offer to SAG-AFTRA addressing AI demands amid 9-month strike." The long and short of it is, as mentioned, these companies have sent their best and last final offer, but it sounds like SAG, instead of taking the offer, which a good portion of their members want at this point, they want this offer to be taken and they want to move on and get back to work. Well, a number of their members, despite that, still want to continue striking, despite how these video game companies are saying, like, they're not going to keep, negotiating with SAG after this point in time. Basically, it looks like if SAG denies this offer and keeps trying to strike and negotiate more, these video game companies will start finding labor that does want to work, whether it's people who are not a part of the union, people overseas, etc., etc. Basically, these companies are sick of negotiating with SAG. It's been going on for about a year and a half now, if I recall correctly, this whole like official video game strike. And then there's the whole like unofficial collective work refusal going on with Hoyoverse VAs and all that stuff too. But it's interesting because there's now this like growing divide in the union with people that want this offer taken and people who don't want it taken, saying it's not good enough and to keep striking. So it's a growing divide. And like we saw with Elias, some people are criticizing the union to some extent, but then going on to delete their tweets for whatever reason. Maybe they got nervous. Maybe they got a threatening letter. Maybe other VAs were messaging behind the scenes. Who knows for sure? But that takes us over to the VA for Capitano in Genshin Impact, among some other roles here, that being Chris Tergliafera, hopefully I said that right. And he went on to say, all of SAG-AFTRA membership got to vote on the interactive strike authorization. And now, even after receiving the last, best, and final offer, SAG is saying they are still negotiating. No, you aren't. It's done. The deal is good. Now let us vote to end this strike. What I find confusing here is if SAG is saying that they are actually still going to try to negotiate with these video game companies who are saying that they're not going to negotiate anymore, is that not implying that the majority members voted already to continue the strike? And if not, then the implication is that some executives made this decision on their own, but ultimately these executives are ones that the members would have voted in. So what's really going on behind the scenes, I wonder? Hopping over to Blue Sky now for some examples of the divide between actors, VAs, members, if you will. We've got Kaiser Neko here. I'm not sure if he's part of SAG, but I think Sean Chiplock is. We'll get to that. But Kaiser Neko says, and I say I'm not sure, but I'm pretty, I'm more sure that he's not a part of SAG than he is. But again, don't know for sure. Okay. Disclaimers aside, Kaiser Neko says, so it seems some VAs are saying that the current offer being put forward to SAG-AFTRA is good and that they should vote on it. I'm hearing some conflicting points, though, about the actual quality of the deal. Then it may not, in fact, be good enough. Sean Chiplock, VA for, I believe, what's his name? Red hair, black outfit. Deluge saying, or Sean Chiplock saying, one of the single biggest issues is that a lot of coverage applies only if a prompt used to make it is your exact name. That's it. Character name, no coverage. Game/series reference, no coverage. Literally anything other than Scott/Kaiser Neko, even if it's 100% your voice, no coverage. Another response here saying, issue number 2, among many, the right to use generated AI voices, including yours, to scab for you during a future strike. Yes, you, the person, retain the right to go on strike, but your digital replica is allowed to keep working or replace you unless you want to pay the company to rescind that. But someone refutes that, saying this isn't entirely accurate. Who is this someone? Another VA? John Helldivers 2, Superman, occasional TV appearer. Okay. Says this isn't entirely accurate. ICDRs and DRs are the subject to consent and bargaining, ink on paper, in the LBF on a pay-as-you-go basis. The buyout was removed, yay, NEGCOM, that being negotiating committee, I believe. There are 3 barriers against this: consent to ICDR, setting terms to it, and then being able to make one in the first place. Sean saying, can a company generate a digital replica of your, Craig's, voice without using your name, thereby circumventing the coverage your ICDR would receive by being directly attached to you, and then proceed to use that during a future strike without your consent? And so the person says, Craig says, they could use GAI to enter in a character's name they owned to create a replica. But if it sounds like me, they are open to being sued. I for sure think companies are heartless, but I also think they're lazy. That hypothetical edge case doesn't scare me as badly as what we're putting at risk. Sean saying, sued by who? SAG-AFTRA and their legal team / funding? Or by you and your personal team? In the latter, what does that mean for actors who don't have access to their own legal team or enough funds to pursue the lawsuit? To which, as of 2 hours ago, and as of recording, I should say, there has not been a response to that question just yet. But all this is to say that, once again, as you can see, there is a divide between people in the union and not a part of the union looking at the situation, and divide with if they think the deal should be signed or if the union should continue striking against the companies. But ultimately, even if they do, as we just went over a few minutes ago, it sounds like the video game companies have put forth their best offer. They're not going to negotiate any further, and things are going to move on. Who knows if that's true or not? Who knows if, hypothetically, SAG continues to negotiate, if the video game companies will be like, okay, fine, and sit down and keep negotiating, or if they really are done. That remains to be seen. I'll leave it there for today. Hope you enjoyed my coverage. If you did, please consider liking and or subscribing, and also consider letting me know what you think about all this stuff in the comments. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.